Okay, we're going to get started here. Thank you for joining us for what we hope is a very engaging and interesting conversation today. I'm pleased to welcome Teza Mukavili from Upwork Global Incorporated. Teza is the head of information security at Upwork. He's also worked at eBay and PayPal with a focus on privacy and information security. He's been responsible for implementing security policy, risk assessment, performing risk assessments, and GRC policy solutions. Thank you, Teza, for being here.
Thank you, Horatio, and I hope we can get everybody excited for the next 30 minutes. So.
Sure, I think we can do that. So before we begin, we marketed this webinar to folks outside of our customer base, so I want to make sure that the audience really understands who OPSWAT is very quickly, and then we'll bring it back to you, Teza.
Yep.
Just as a level set, OPSWAT has been around for over 15 years. We're a global cybersecurity company, really focused in all different products around advanced threat prevention and device compliance. We have over 1,000 customers, 24/7 support, engineers all around the world. At this point, numbering about 175 employees, and many of the leading technology companies use us as well for some of their technology needs as an OEM. So we're very happy to be talking to some of our customers today, as well as some new members of the IT community that are interested in this topic. Upwork is one of our customers, and we've invited them here today to talk a little bit, to share a little bit of their experience with one of our technologies and a security challenge that they had to respond to. And so with that, let me bring it back to our guest here, who is Teza. Teza, for the audience that we have, they may not know who Upwork is. Can you spend a few minutes here just kind of giving us an introduction to your company and what you do?
Absolutely. So Upwork is the world's largest freelancing website, if you don't know about it. We are headquartered here in Mountain View, California. Essentially, what we are is a marketplace which has two sides, of course. We have businesses on one side who hire talent, which is available on the other end. So you have clients and you have freelancers who connect with us. And from an annual volume perspective, Horatio, if you go to the next slide, we do close to 1 billion plus a year, so that's the amount of transaction that happens between our clients and our freelancers. We have close to 5 million plus clients. A lot of large enterprises are signing up to this mission of global freelancing. Close to 12 million freelancers and 3,500 skills.
So it's almost like you're fueling the gig economy these days.
Yeah, it is kind of like that. We want to call ourselves the gig economy of work. Like 20 years back, eBay was the gig economy of selling everything online. So we kind of filling that mission.
Okay, so it sounds like for this kind of marketplace, its scale is pretty important. Give me a sense for sort of what are the priorities from an IT operation standpoint on this kind of operation?
Absolutely, and so critical piece, I would say, critical success factor is enabling collaboration between clients and freelancers, and not just when they are on an engagement. It starts from the time they step into the door, which is they're registering. So as a freelancer, you come in, you register, you create a resume. And all the way through the process where you're working, you're delivering files. So it's critical for us to make sure the community that's engaged on Upwork is safe and secure. A lot of this happens through files being exchanged between both the sender and the receiver. And this is a typical workflow where you have clients on one end, freelancers on the other, and on a daily basis, at least 1 million artifacts go between them. And these artifacts could be Word documents, it could be zip files. If somebody is delivering a website for a client, it would be HTML code. So different varieties and formats that pass through the system.
And so from an IT operations standpoint, give us a sense of your IT organization and what the priorities are in this, and like to keep up and running in this kind of environment.
So we don't have a large IT organization. As any other startup, we are pretty small. We are under 20 folks, and with varied varied kind of tasks throughout the day. People wear different multiple hats based on what the need of the day is. So scale is extremely important for us because we want a system which kind of like can enable so many files to be transferred on a daily basis, and can also make sure that we're not like spending hours together like firefighting it. So that's an important piece for us from a scale.
I would think that end user performance, end user speed is also important as a SaaS player.
Absolutely, and that's critical as well. When we have a messenger app which is used frequently to exchange messages, so we don't want the sender to like upload a file and wait for like minutes together for the receiver to be able to download it. So the experience has to be kind of seamless, where the exchanges happen real time.
And so the focus of today's webinar is something we call data sanitization. How long, can you tell the audience how long you've been a customer of OPSWAT and of that particular technology as well?
Absolutely. We initially started with the multi-scanning product that OPSWAT has I believe in 2015, and then we signed up for the beta version in Q4 of 2016. Because while the multi-scanning worked, we saw some of these sophisticated attacks which were still coming in, and we wanted something to help, kind of plug that issue for us. And that's when we signed up for the data sanitization product that OPSWAT has. It started out by we started seeing a growing number of malware attacks that started happening on our platform, and our users kind of complaining about it, saying, we want this platform to be more secure and safe to use. I shouldn't be thinking before downloading a file whether this is secure or not, right? So we called the OPSWAT team. We had a brainstorming session, and we said, how can you help us solve this problem? And I think that was a point where you guys proposed that, why don't you try out this beta version of CDR? And we stepped in and we said, yeah, we'll try it out, and that's how this entire thing started.
And you put this slide together. Give us a sense of the specific security challenge you were seeing in your network. You mentioned a million files going. Is that daily that you were seeing that?
Yeah, it's million files a day, and it kind of changes. There are off-peak seasons and peak seasons. So during peak seasons, we would see close to 2 million files going back and forth. So the scale kind of changes. And with scale comes some of these threats. So there's always the bad guy watching out that when can he enter into the system. So I would say H2 of last year, which was Q3 and Q4, we started seeing 3 to 4 malware attacks a week. And while I say 3 to 4 attacks, this could go to multiple users across the platform. So any user who downloads the file is essentially impacted by it. So the victim count could be different based on what the malware attack is. The second piece is, while we scan close to 1 million files a day, the sophisticated ones are not caught by the AV engines, purely because AV engines rely on a virus signature update, and that's not always there to catch your zero-day attacks. So.
Yeah, so this is a big problem for the industry right now, zero-day attacks. We know that the AV engines can do so much with signatures, and they have some heuristics to stop unknown attacks, but when you think about the more sophisticated attacks that we're seeing, zero-day is a big problem. So with respect to the zero-day problem, what were the approaches or the alternatives that you looked at for trying to stop this part of the problem for you?
Absolutely. One of the things we started was looking at what was the root cause, of course, where this started, and we noticed that some of these 0 days were as simple as changing a simple hash in a Word doc and making it a new vector of attack, because the virus signature is not still updated. You could feed it from an old hash, but new hash comes in, right? And and then obviously it is we started exploring what's out there in the industry. Providers which have 64 engines, companies which claim to be like very advanced in terms of catching some of these malware. We tested out with a few, but we didn't see a huge reduction in the attacks happening. We also observed the scanning times increase, so the stability of the system was questionable at times, and user experience kind of getting impacted, which was a huge consideration because for anything that security introduces, the product has to be sold on it. The product team, right? They would have to be ready to add that additional step in the process. So it was important for us. So we did look at a few providers out there. VirusTotal is very popular. We looked at them and a few others. So just a final line on that is we did test them in parallel along with OPSWAT team for your CDR product. So we kind of like compared the results head on head.
That's great to hear. We won't get into specifics on the names, but you did drop one, of course, that we know very well. Let me ask you a question. So you looked at different alternatives. You came upon you looked at a beta that we had at that time for data sanitization, and you finally put that in place. So can you give us a sense for what the solution looks like today, what you finally went with, and for the challenge you had?
Okay, sure. So the way we use it is any file that enters into our platform, we do a quick check to determine what is the extension, what are the other security attributes that are associated with that file, and then we send it through a 3-level process, which is we look at extensions. So if something is an extension which is potentially a malware kind of file, we block it. We send it to the AV engines that OPSWAT provides. So it's a multi-scan 8-engine product. And then the final piece is the data sanitization. If we detect that this has an active object, the file has an active object in it, we send it to your data sanitization engine. Based on the response, we decide real time whether we should allow the receiver to get the file or not. And something that I want to call out is the scanning speed, because a million files a day kind of can choke up the system. For example, the files don't always come as a normal file. Sometimes it be a zip embedded in a zip going 7 levels down, right? Things like that, which have a potential to choke up your performance and system. But what we have seen is 75% or 75th percentile of our scanning happens within a second. Of course, the longer, now we have enough confidence in this algorithm to say that the longer the time it takes to scan something, potentially it is a bad file, right? Because we have enough confidence on what CDR does and what the scanning does to it, which is data sanitization. 99% of files are delivered within 6 seconds.
Yeah, that's right. So in our own testing, we see most of the files are coming in under 1 second. So I know that for most of our customers, real-time sort of scanning and performance is important, and that's one of the things that we tout as well. So it sounds like you've now been able to use the multi-scan, and that gets you some percentage of coverage, and then you use the data sanitization as a complement to look for unknown threats or 0 days that are coming through in some of the files that you're receiving on file uploads.
Yeah. So I would say the bulk of malware files are caught by the AV engine because of how the signatures work. But the real sophisticated ones, which have it reminds me of something that has been happening for 20 years. It could be as simple as a macro-enabled Word doc, right? While some companies take an approach that we won't allow macro-enabled files, we as a collaboration platform cannot make such hard calls, right? And finance needs it. Like lot of companies, lot of groups within an organization need those files to work efficiently.
Right.
And that is where data sanitization helps scan those files and kind of cut the real bad files out of the system.
I mean, it's important to note here that we actually have a lot of configurability in the product. So some companies choose for the finance group to allow macros in an Excel document, right? But for other groups, they can disable that. So there's a lot of configurability as to what we actually sanitize or neutralize in files. So you've been using the product now, what, 6 to 9 months? Is that about right?
Yeah, almost. This is our 4th quarter of using it.
So you had prepared a slide that talked about the general benefits that you're getting from the solution. I thought it'd be great if we shared that with the audience as well.
Sure. We're happy that we've been able to cut a lot of our attacks down. The general attacks which happen, which is data sanitization, has been able to bring that down. Also, something that we've seen is, because when we were in the process of deciding what should be our approach 3-4 quarters back, we tried out sandboxing, we tried out some of the other ways. The maintenance of those systems is a massive pain, right? You need to have dedicated staff who are just looking at it. Sandboxing, for example, the malware now is intelligent enough to know if the sandbox is a VM or not. And the moment it's a VM, it goes dormant. So sometimes the sandboxing approaches work, but it needs a lot of fine-tuning. A good thing that we've seen with data sanitization is from OPSWAT is that it's easy. You have one single panel. You'll spend a little bit of time initially sitting with the OPSWAT team configuring the rules, but on an ongoing basis, you would see a lot of that go down.
Yeah, so that was what you meant by the lower maintenance overhead than some of the other solutions you mentioned. Okay. Can you give us a sense of the deployment, what the deployment challenges were, or how you use the product week to week?
Absolutely. So for us, most of our environment is Linux based. So the first beta product that OPSWAT has was a Windows based product. So from an implementation standpoint, that was a shift in our, I would say, philosophy that we had to make within engineering, is to sign up for OPSWAT, which is working on Windows. But we needed something to get it going, right? So we said, yeah, let's go and do it. That was one, I would say, a deployment challenge that we had, definitely. And beyond that,
you are aware we're going to come out with the Linux version here. We're already in beta actually with that.
Absolutely, and I'm excited to sign up for that, so that we don't use any Windows instances on our end. So that was one deployment challenge I want to call out. But beyond that, I think because we were already using OPSWAT, it was pretty seamless for us.
Okay. So, Teza, give me a second here. I'm just going to level set with the audience what we've been talking about in terms of data sanitization and CDR. They're two similar terms. I'm not sure everybody has a baseline in this technology, but it's up and coming. It's very emergent as an advanced threat prevention technology. Obviously, it stems from the basic vulnerability and attack vector that you have in documents, productivity documents, everything that you would normally see coming over email or what have you, even images, statographic attacks, hyperlinks that can send some user to an unsuspecting user to a website. Archives, as you mentioned, many hackers are putting these files within archives and recursively burying them 2 or 3 levels deep. So that's what these technologies basically do, is deal with this problem. If you look at the statistics, we really saw an uptick in the problem toward the end of 2016. These are Symantec's numbers. They are able to track Office macro and JavaScript issues with documents, and it's been kind of consistently up and down. It's a pretty high number of files that we're seeing that have these type of issues. And again, 2016 saw that growing as I think new forms of machine learning on AV have made AV prevention a little bit better now again. And so this is one of the ways that hackers are getting around that trend. If you heard about the nuclear breaches in the U.S. nuclear power plants that happened this summer, a lot of those were attributed to a nation-state actor out there that was initiated through a resume upload. So resume uploads often have these type of attacks, and they can somehow fish for credentials that way, and then they were able to get into some of these nuclear facilities. If you want to learn more about file-borne or document-based malware, we just put out a primer. I just wanted to put the link out here. It's on our blog. It's a really good rundown over the last 10 years of the different things we're seeing around this type of attack, and it's something that's really close to home for us given the technology. If you look at what Wikipedia or analysts are terming CDR, Content Disarm and Reconstruction, we like to talk about it like boiling water. You can take any file, put it through this process, and at the end, what we're trying to do is remove the possibility of a macro, of a link, of an embedded OLE object, or of a script essentially being malicious. And so it's sort of a process that can catch things that the AV engines don't. Gartner has talked about this in reference to sandboxes as an alternative, and they really have recommended it as something to look at for email security gateways. They are increasingly looking at this as an alternative to advanced threat prevention, and there's an analyst called Neil Wynn who has put out this report this year in May. With respect to OPSWAT CDR, last slide, we feel like we have the widest coverage, over 25 file types supported, and that's important. Most of the vendors in the market really that we look at only look at the Office documents and a few images. We have over 100 types of transformations. We talked about the configurability. We can set it by AD group, what we neutralize or disable and what we don't. We have regional support for some file types that don't exist very prevalently in the North American region. And we can even remove confidential data from some of the images like GPS data and other types of privacy data. The big thing is that we keep the file types intact. If you look at the two examples here, we typically will take a PowerPoint, keep it in a PowerPoint format if you want. You can also write it to a different transformation. We can keep a Word doc in a Word format after the process, and many of the providers in this space are not doing that, and so this is one of the things we're proud of. That is basically the end. Any parting thoughts from you, Teza? Any thoughts about what you're looking forward to with this problem going forward?
Yeah, I'm definitely looking to use Linux when we have it out there. The one thing that I want to mention is AV. Having been in this space for several years, AV is a good strategy, but AV does not give you full coverage. CDR is kind of becoming a new need, absolute need to be successful against these kind of attacks. Of course, there'll be new attacks happening in the future, but for now, I think this is a good blocker. Also, we are doing, we're growing very fast, and I have some exciting roles on the team. If you're interested, feel free to ping me on LinkedIn, and we can definitely connect.
Okay, we're not going to actually end just now. I'm going to go ahead and open it up for any questions to Upwork and Teza or OPSWAT. If anybody has any questions, we'll give a few minutes here to answer them. We see one here. What is the performance impact of data sanitization? So from our standpoint, it's less than a second to scan to do the process on a file on any of these file types. We mention it. We use it here internally. At OPSWAT, we have about 275 employees, and it's used across any document that's traversing our web or our email channel. So it has to be real time, or it'll essentially create an obtrusive experience for end users. Teza, anything else you want to add to that?
And we've had similar experience as well. Like I pointed out earlier, most of our files are delivered seamlessly. So by the time it's the sender sending it and the receiver immediately getting it, the longer it takes, there's definitely a valid reason behind that. It's most likely something malicious. So performance has never been a concern on our end.
I have another question here. What is the package data sanitization is included in? Can it be added to all of the OPSWAT packages? Yes, it can. It's part of our Metadefender backend instance, which starts with multi-scanning, and you can add this as a license to that. Data sanitization is available for all of our use cases, so kiosk, where you can scan USB drives with data sanitization. It's available for email, ICAP, so we can integrate into load balancers that front a web portal. We can integrate into anything that supports ICAP and scan files that are going across that device and use the protocol to talk to the backend. So at this point, one last question: how can I try this out? So we have all of this available. You can try it out at metadefender.com. You can upload a file and actually have it analyzed real time and see how it works on that. And so we invite you to do that as well. And at this point, I think that's no other questions. I will say thank you very much, Teza, for joining us on this webinar. It's been great to hear your experience and how you're using the product. We look forward to keeping you as a happy customer. We also have a 2-minute video that we just put out on CDR. It really shows the power of the technology, and I wanted to put the URL up here for anybody who wants to go to that. It's a great chance to look at how it's different than multiscan, and a lot of folks are excited about that demo there. So thank you very much for joining us, and appreciate your attendance. Bye-bye.
Thanks for inviting me. Yeah.